In this Intarsia demonstration, I'm going to show you a few techniques, including how to join in a new colour in the middle of a row and how to cross the yarns at colour changes to avoid gaps or holes in your work. First of all, it is advisable to prepare your bobbins or balls of yarn before you begin knitting an Intarsia square. When looking at the chart, I can see 5 sections, 3 amethyst and 2 of garnet. I've wound off 5 bobbins, so I'm now ready to begin chart row 3. The row begins with 9 amethyst. I'm going to work 8 out of the 9 amethyst stitches, and on stitch number 9 of amethyst I'm going to join in my next colour, which is garnet. I put my needle into the next stitch ready to knit, place the new yarn over the needle just in front of the working yarn, and then as I go to knit with amethyst and bring the new stitch through, it's joined loosely, but enough and securely enough for me to continue using it. Now I'm going to work 4 garnet stitches, so it's needle into the next stitch, the old colour keeping it on the wrong side of the work, over to the left, pick up the new colour and knit. And I need to knit 4 stitches, but I'm going to knit 3, and on stitch number 4 I'm going to introduce the next bobbin of amethyst. New yarn over the needle in front of the working yarn. Knit 1 stitch using garnet, then old colour over to the left, pick up the new colour and continue knitting, and there's 9 stitches of amethyst. On the 9th stitch of amethyst I'm going to introduce my next bobbin of garnet, and then continue to use garnet for the next 4 stitches. There's one last join in to do, and that's here on the 4th stitch of garnet. Join in my next and final bobbin of amethyst, and then continue to the end of the row with amethyst, and that will be all of my 5 bobbins joined into the work. Okay, if we look at chart row 4, you can see that garnet on each petal moves out by 1 stitch on each side. So this is my first wrong side row with all the colours joined in. I'm not working to the stitch before anymore. I'm working up to the colour changes and then crossing the yarns to avoid gaps or holes between the colour changes. So I'm working 8 stitches of amethyst, I'm now at the point of colour change, I'm changing from amethyst to garnet. Put my needle into the next stitch ready to purl. I take my old yarn, my amethyst, and put it over to the left, keeping it on the wrong side of the work. Pick up my bobbin of garnet so it comes up from underneath the amethyst, and as I go to purl it will come over the top of the amethyst and will change colour neatly without a hole or a gap because I've crossed the yarns over. At this point I would just take this slack out of the garnet yarn by holding the two stitches close together and just pulling on the yarn so that any slack here is taken out of the yarn. Then I'm going to continue to work another another 5 garnet stitches. Okay, so I've gone over the top of one of the amethyst stitches from the row below. Then I'm ready to change from garnet to my next bobbin of amethyst, which is here. So garnet over to the left, pick up the amethyst so it comes over the top, work that amethyst stitch, pull on both yarns, so that's the garnet and the amethyst, to make sure that colour join is nice and neat, and then continue on purling to the next colour change. So that's 7 stitches of amethyst in the centre. Just putting the bobbins that I've used out of the way over on this side of the work above my needle so that they don't distract from the stitches I've got to knit on the remainder of this row. Okay, next bobbin. So colour change means that the old colour amethyst goes over to the left. Pick up the new yarn so it comes up from underneath and crosses over the old yarn. Purl that first stitch, and because we've come out by 1 stitch, I'm just going to hold these 2 stitches close together again and pull on the garnet to take out any slack so that join is as neat as possible. Then I'm going to continue purling across 5 more garnet stitches over to the left. Final colour change of this row, pick up the new colour from underneath. So the yarns cross, pull firmly and continue purling to the end of the row. Okay, so there we go. So we've got 8 stitches in amethyst, 6 garnet, 7 amethyst, 6 garnet and 8 amethyst. You can see here where the tail of garnet is just peeking through, so all you need to do before you start the next row is just pull gently and firmly on all the tails where you joined in, those new colours. Just pull on all the tails firmly, in fact pull on all the yarns nice and firmly, just to make sure those colour changes are nice and neat. And then we're ready to begin row 5 of the chart, And again, if we look at row 5, you can see that the garnet stitches are moving out by 1 stitch on either side again. So we work right up to the colour change. I'm leaving my bobbins on fairly short lengths so that they don't get too unruly. So on a right side row colour change, it's exactly the same as we did on a wrong side row with purl stitches, but we're knitting this time. So it's old colour over to the left on the wrong side of the work, pick up the new colour, so the yarns cross, pull firmly on both yarns, hold the 2 garnet stitches close together and pull, so any slack yarn, garnet yarn, is pulled out, keeping that quite nice and tight there. Knit across until you have 8 stitches knitted in garnet, and then we're ready to change back or change over to the next bobbin of amethyst, which, just get that sorted, is here. Just make sure nothing is caught up in the crossover. You want your yarns all to be crossed over without anything getting caught as you cross them over. Okay, so old colour over to the left, pick up the new one so it comes over the top of the old colour. If I'm counting my stitches correctly, we've got 5 stitches now in amethyst before we change to the next bobbin of garnet, which is here. Just making sure nothing's caught up in that. Okay, so old colour over to the left, pick up the new colour so it comes over the top of the old colour. Again, hold those 2 garnet stitches close together and pull any slack out of the yarn at that point before you continue. Working 8 stitches of garnet, then ready to make our final colour change for this row. So it's old colour over to the left, keeping it on the wrong side of the work. Pick up the next bobbin, the last bobbin of amethyst, so it comes over the top of the old colour. Pause, just pull on both those yarns at the point of colour change to make sure that the stitches are nice and neat, and then continue to the end of the row. I would say it's a good idea, just have a look at this row now, it's a good idea to, at the end of each row, just to pull on each of the yarns, particularly here at the colour changes, just to make sure that everything is as neat as possible before you begin the next row. And that's rows 4 and 5 of the chart for square 5 completed.